a medrash in Kollel. The medrash says, Lamad Adam v'limed, a person learns Torah and teaches Torah, Shomer v'asa, he keeps mitzvahs. Lo hechzik Torah, but he doesn't support Torah. Areu b'chlal arur asher lo yakim et divrei haTorah azot la'asot ota. One of the psukim that says later on, it says that arur gives a directive, a command, that a person not only has to learn Torah, but he has to be yakim et divrei Torah. He has to support and uphold and make sure the Torah stands and does not fall. And of course, that's referring to people, of course, that financially support Torah endeavors. But you see from over here, from this medrash in Kohelet, that you really need both. It's not enough to just learn and teach, but a person has to also try to support others financially to support Torah. But certainly, those that support Torah should not use that as an excuse to shirk their duties their own duties in terms of learning Torah as well. Rav Galinsky actually brings a mashal. Rav Galinsky actually, I think, supported many different kollels and yeshivas. He was also a gaon. He was from Navardik. He survived Siberia during the Holocaust. And he was a poor man, but he went all over raising money as well for Torah institutions. He went to the door of a wealthy person, and the wealthy person said, I'm Mekayim the pasuk B'zeas apecha toicha lechem. With the sweat of your brow you shall earn your bread. The Torah also says you have to work. He says, why should I have to give my hard-earned money to support people to sit all day and learn Torah? So Rav Galinsky said to him a story. He said that one time there was a man who was a malamed. He was a school teacher. And it turns out that perhaps he rented out part of his meager house, his basement. And the authorities realized that there was a counterfeit money coming out of the basement of that house. So they took this poor melamed, this poor school teacher, and they threw him in jail. They took him to trial, and they wanted to hang him for running a counterfeit operation. So he obviously had a good lawyer. And the lawyer says, when the poor Jew, this Nebuch, takes the stand, he said to him, tell me, what do you do all day? He said, I teach 12 hours a day, or 10 hours a day with a 2-hour break. I teach 10 hours a day. He said, how much do you make? He says that, he teaches 8 kids. He says, how much do the parents pay? Gornish, right? Nothing. A kopek here, a kopek there. He says, but why do you do it? He says, teaching Torah is an amazing thing. That's what I get my fulfillment out of. So he turns to the judge and says, Judge, you think that if this guy had a counterfeit factory going on in his basement, you think he'd be a cheder teacher for 12 hours a day? That's what he'd be doing? He'd be putting all of his time into the counterfeit business. It makes so much more money. So they let him off. They realized that, that doesn't make sense. That this guy, if he really did have a counterfeit operation going on in his basement that was his, so then he would devote 10, 12 hours a day to teaching children for pennies. So Galinsky says to the wealthy man, he says, in truth, he says, imagine that you had a diamond mine in your basement. He said, what would you do? He said, I'd spend all my time mining for diamonds. So he says, you should understand that when a person learns Torah, he's literally mining for diamonds. Literally mining for diamonds. He says, and when a person's working, he said, when you go to work, you're like the malamed that's working for pennies. In other words, there's wealth, and then there's real wealth. The real wealth of the world is for a Jew to learn Torah. That's the real wealth. Those are the diamonds. Right? Whatever business we're engaged in when it comes to the physical world, when it comes to material, when it comes to, even if a person's making 6 figures, even if a person's making millions of dollars a year, and whatever he's doing, but he says, but really in the world of truth, that's like the malamed making pennies. He says, because why? Because the real wealth that a person procures is the mitzvahs and the Torah that he does, not the actual material money that he makes. He says, the problem is that most people in life don't realize that the real diamonds are those moments when we're learning Torah and actually doing mitzvahs. So he says, so those Talmidei Chachamim that view their learning literally like gathering diamonds, so then you can't blame them for wanting to do it 12 hours a day, for doing it day and night. And it's a privilege to be able to support that. Because why? Because if I take my physical diamonds, meaning my money, my bank account, and I use it to support Talmidei Chachamim were gathering spiritual diamonds, so then we know, like by Yisachar Zvulun. So then the wealthy person, by using his money for that purpose, is able to also share in the achievements of the Torah learning of the other. But still, you see from the Medrash in Kollel that a person has to learn himself as well. In fact, the more that a person could turn away, or the more a person could limit the amount of hours that he's actually working to make physical money, and he could steer those hours towards delving into learning Torah and doing mitzvahs, the wealthier he will be, certainly in his spiritual bank account and in the world to come. What does that have to do with this week's Parsha? So the Chatam Sofer darshans this idea from the very first pasuk. It says, V'ata Tetzaveh et b'nei Yisrael, right? Command the Jewish people, V'yikro elek Hashem and zayit zach katit lamor, and tell them to take pure olive oil, katit lamor, crushed, for the kindling of the menorah, lahalot ner tamid. So zach means it has to be pure. Katit means like extra pure. And in fact, this is known as, of course, I don't know what extra virgin olive oil means in the food market today. I know it means it's like the finest oil, but Rashi tells us that it's the first drop that comes out of every olive. Meaning the first drop that comes out of every olive is the purest. That's the extra virgin part. The first drop that comes out, that is actually squeezed. The first drop is squeezed into a container, and that's devoted to the menorah, to lighting the menorah. And then the rest of the oil that's squeezed out of the olives is used for the menachos, right? To bring the meal offerings in the Beit HaMikdash. So Rashi says over here that, how do I know that only the olive oil for kindling the menorah needs the extra virgin olive oil, that first drop? And maybe the menachot also need that. So Rashi says, he brings the medrash that says, Hashem and Hasheni, the second drops coming out of the olive are pasul for the menorah. They're pasul for the menorah. The menorah needs the first drop. But they're kasher lamnachot, but they're kosher for the meal offerings. How do I know that? Shenemar katit lamaor velo katit lamanachos. We infer. It says katit lamaor, the first drop has to be katit lamaor, which implies that you don't need the first drop for the menachah. So katit lamaor velo katit lamanachos. Says the Chatam Sofer. We know that the ma'or, the light in the Beis HaMikdash, which came from the menorah represents Torah, represents Chachma. Right? The Gemara says, the Medrash says, Mishur atzel lachkim yadrim. Mishur atzel ashir yatspin. Right? It says what? That someone who wants wealth should daven towards the north, which is symbolic of the Shulchan. The Shulchan represents physical sustenance, financial prosperity. Anyone that wants Chachma of Torah should look to the south, which is the menorah. The menorah was in the south of the Heichal. So the idea over here is katit means, katit also could mean could be referring to yourself, to squeeze the kishkis out of you. And what is he saying? He's saying that where should a person squeeze himself? Where should a person put his efforts? Lamaor. For Torah. For Torah. Katit lamaor. Velo katit lamanachos. So he understands the medrash as follows. Where should a person put his maximum effort in life? Katit. Where should a person squeeze all the juice out of himself? Maximize his efforts? That's lamor. That's for Torah learning. Not for menachos. Menachos, which is parnasa, for sure. A person has to put in hours and hours and hours into parnasa. But this person shouldn't lose focus. It's hard enough making a living, period. But making a living where a person is still keeps in his mind that the primary goal is to still have time for learning Torah, to recognize that the primary thing is learning Torah and doing mitzvahs. And parnas is one of the mitzvahs, right? Kadosh Baruch Hu said, yeah, you have to make a parnas, and it's going to take time, it's going to take toil to make parnas. But the Torah tells us, but let's not forget that a Jew's essential purpose for being in this world is to gain the Chachmas HaTorah, to learn the wisdom of the Torah, and to involve himself in spiritual matters. Which is learning Torah and doing mitzvahs. And that's why he says, katit, to the best of a person's ability, he should try to put his maximum effort into learning Torah, and obviously to do what you need to do in order to make parnas as well, to feed your family. But to realize that the Torah is the primary. That's what the Psalm server says. Katit lamor velo katit la menachot. Baruch Hashem. Think about the Yiddish mama, Peter's mother, which did I know her? I met her, yeah. And my own mother-in-law. Some people can't speak about their mothers-in-law. I could, Baruch Hashem, we got along well. I just never spoke to her, so we got along great. No, we actually got along great. You know, and I say the Yiddish mom, I'm sure that Peter, your mother was also like this. That, men get caught up a lot of times in the secondary and lose focus on the primary. But the Yiddish mama, right, the mothers, they know it's the primary. Even my mother-in-law, who didn't grow up religious, but she became like very, very Torah-dick in the house, and she steered the Torah in the family. She guided the kids in the family. She's the one that pushed for more Torah education. I'm sure your mother was the same way. Mothers have the bina, have the understanding to realize that katit lamaor, that a person was brought into this world to toil in spiritual matters, not financial and material matters. Obviously, you have to toil in financial matters because Yimein Kemach Ein Torah. If there's no money, there's no Torah either. But to realize, not to get carried away and sidetracked by that, but to realize, and sometimes in the sut of the Nashim Tzidkonius, of the righteous women who have that focus, that being Yetera, that's why Peter Dayan could even come wearing a hat, davening with a hat in honor of his mother. Even I don't wear a hat in honor of my mother-in-law. You wear a hat in honor of your mother. It's a great thing. So Bez Hashem, through the deeds that you do, the deeds that we do, the deeds that we all do, the Torah mitzvahs, right? Our loved ones who have passed should have an aliyah to their neshumas. Also, we should all merit through the mitzvahs and through squeezing ourselves for Torah. We should be able to be zoifet to Yeshua's and the Chamas, to the Gula Shlem, B'Meir B'Meir Amen.